Hi, welcome to the first week of class in CSCI 201X, brought to you by your SCP for CSCI 201 with an X and the director of CSCI 201X, which is me. So in this video, we're going to cover the first week's material of CSCI 201. I will show you how to create a Java command line program, how to read arguments, how to read user input, how the conditions work, how loops work, how methods work, how arrays work, strings, classes, package, and exception handling. Without further ado, let's get into it. First of all, so this is a brand new project, and by the way, I'm using IntelliJ. In class, we're using Eclipse, but I do not like Eclipse, so I'm not going to use that. But the principles are the same because they're both Java. So I created this empty project here named Week 1 Demo, and this source folder. So all your source files, all your Java source files, go into the source folder. And so here we're going to make it new. We can either directly make a new Java class, or we can place it into a package. Now I'm going to place it into a package because that's just good practice. And I'm going to name it com.usc.csci201x. That is the name of my package. And now I'm going to create a new Java class. I'm going to name it main. You don't have to name it main. I'm just naming it main so that I know it's the main class of this project. So here we go. Should I add to Git? Sure, why not? Okay, so now we have an empty main class with nothing in it. So how are we going to run the program? So if you look here, the run button is grayed out because our program doesn't yet have an entry point, and we're going to add that right now. So the entry point, which is the main method, goes public static void main string array args. I can't type today. All right, there we go. And now you can see we have this little green button over here, which means that we can run our program from this method. Now you may be wondering, now what is the string args thing, and who calls the main method? All right. So the main method is called by the OS or the Java thing that you're running. So you are actually, as a user, you're calling the main method. And the string args is basically the command line arguments that you pass in. Now, it's basically a string array. So what we can do here, we can do system.out.println. That's how you can print stuff to the console. And we can do args.length. There we go. So so if we run this right now, just directly without any command line arguments, we run it, run main. Let's run, come on. Now, you see it says 0 because we didn't pass in any command line arguments. Let's see, how can we, oops. Sorry about this. How can I mute? There we go. Okay. Now, let me move this window to the side here. All right, there we go. So you can see here, without any arguments passed in, the length of this arguments array is 0. Now let's pass something in by going to edit configurations. Program arguments. Let's just do arg1, arg2. Nice. Okay. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 arguments. Hopefully you agree with that. Now we can click OK and we run this again. And you can see here, we got 4 command line arguments. So now, how do we, so let me create a new class. Actually, let me create a new class just to handle the command line arguments. I'm going to call it argument parser. Now, you might be asking, why do you create a new class? Can't you just do it in main? And of course I can. You can write all your stuff in main, but that's generally not a good practice. For multiple reasons. First of all, it's considered what we call as spaghetti code. So your code is all in one file. It just goes on and on and on. It's very difficult to maintain. It's very difficult to debug. It's also very difficult for other people to read. It's also very difficult for you to reuse that code later. One of the main points about object-oriented programming is that you modularize your program so that you can reuse them later on when you let's say when you need it in a different project. You can just get the file over, get the class over, and then you have it right there. So I'm gonna create an independent class called argument parser, and I'm gonna put my command line parsing utility in there. Okay, so This is a new class that we have here, argument parser. Now we're going to create a new method, a method or function. They call it a method in Java, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. You call it method or function. We all know they refer to the same thing. So let's do public void. Void is the return type. Public is the visibility. And we can make, we'll call it parse, all right? And then it takes in a string array argument. There we go. Okay. Now let's move that code in main. Oh, I deleted that. Okay, now let's do this. Let's do args.count. Length, sorry. Yes. And so now there we go. Now we have a new class and a new public method in that class. And now I'll show you how you can call this method a main. So so first of all, you instantiate the class like so. That's the type. So our argument parser would be the type of your new object. We can call it, let's call it AP equals new argument parser. Now I don't have a constructor. I didn't specify a constructor for argument parser, which is why this is empty. But you can create your own custom constructor. But I won't talk about it in this video. I'll talk about it probably in a later video. But just know that when if you have a custom constructor, this is where you do it. So now I can, after I instantiated this class, I can now go ap.parse, and it's telling me to pass something in. So what should I pass in? I should pass in whatever I defined here. So I'll just pass in the arguments in the main method directly to that function. And now if you run it, and keep in mind that we still have 4 program arguments, and let's run it. And there we go. We got 4 again, which is good, which means this is working. Now I want to do more with this. I don't, because usually what people do with those arguments, is to read them. Like when you get a book, you read it, you don't just count the number of words. So that's what we're going to do here. And in order to do that, we're going to use a for loop to iterate over it. You can also use for each if you want to, but I'm going to show a for loop here. It's very similar to what you did in C++. It's basically for int I, or you can use whatever letter, equals 0, I smaller than the length of this array, and I++. And now if we do system.out.print, and we do args at index I, we should be able to see all the 4 arguments that we put in, arg1, arg2, okay, and nice, or nice and okay. So let's try running this again. And there we go. Now there we have it. We have arg1, arg2, nice, and okay. Alrighty. Now I'm gonna save args I as a variable, so that arg equals, so that when I use it in the future, I don't have to keep doing this index thing. Okay, now I've saved it, I can just replace this with arg. Now another thing to notice is that when you declare an int in Java, or a double in Java, you can see that they are bolded, they are blue, but not for string. Now why is that? Because ints and doubles and some other types like float, I think so too, yeah, they are all what you call primitive types. But string, however, in Java is not primitive. So it's especially tricky when people new to Java, people who are new to Java, when they do string comparisons, they usually do it wrong. I'll show you that in a bit. But for now, let's keep going. So now we got the now we have the argument for our main method. Now we're getting it. Now let's do something with it, shall we? So what I want to do is, if the argument equals something, then I'm gonna print something out, right? I'm just gonna show you how you can do if statements here. So now if arg equals, let's do Jeff, and then we do something here. But pay attention. IntelliJ hided this for me, but in Eclipse it doesn't do that. But look, it says string values are compared using equals, equals, not equals. Now why is that? Like I said earlier, strings are not a primitive type. So if you compare it, if you do it this way, if you do args equals Jeff, what Java's going to do is it's going to see, oh, is args and Jeff literally the same object? And of course, in this case, they're not. And so even if their contents are the same, even if args if the arg string really is Jeff, but they're two separate objects. So in that case, the equality wouldn't hold. So the proper way to do string comparisons in Java would be args.equals. And as you can see here, Java also does equals ignore case. So depending on your needs, do whatever you want. But the right way to do comparison is dot equals. So that's what we're going to do. And if when the argument equals Jeff, I want to do something. I want to print something. I want to print, let me get this. I want to print a portrait. Now, how can I? There we go. I want to print this, right? Oh, there we go. Oops. All right. So if the argument equals Jeff, something's going to print out. So let's run it first without the Jeff argument and see what happens. Let's run it. Nothing happens because we removed all the previous print arguments, and now because none of our arguments are Jeff, so nothing's going to get printed out. So let's change one of them into Jeff. All right, there we go, Jeff. Okay, and now let's run this again. And there we are. Now this is printed. I hope you can see what it is, but it's okay if you don't. And also the good thing about IntelliJ, I'm not sure about Eclipse, is that when you have a super long if statement, if you have actually anything, you can just fold them. So it's really handy in this case. Now, what if I want to do something if the argument isn't Jeff? So that's when a else statement comes in. So let's do else. Let's do else. Out. Print. Shaking my head. You are not Jeff. All right. So I'm actually gonna move Jeff to the first argument, just so that it's easier for you guys to see. So Jeff arg2. Okay. So now let's do it again. All right, so you can see here, we have this portrait, and then we have two more lines printed. Shaking my head, you're not Jeff. Shaking my head, you're not Jeff. I'm not Jeff either. That's basically how an if statement works. So now let's move on to capturing the user's input, like what they type into the console, right? And then for that, of course, being that has CP, I'm gonna create a new class just for that. I'm gonna name it input processor class. There we go. And I'll make a public void because it doesn't return anything. Function called run. Okay. Now, how do we get users' input? We get it by using something called a scanner. Now, what a scanner does is it binds itself to the system input, the system.in input stream, and it basically kind of gets the user input for you. So how does that work? So let's first do scanner, and then I'll import it like that. IntelliJ imports it for you, but Eclipse you have to type it manually. Scanner, let's call it s equals new scanner. Now you may notice, as I said before, when you have a custom constructor, you're going to have to do something about that. So you can see here, cannot resolve constructor scanner because scanner doesn't have an empty constructor. All of its constructors take something in. So in this case, we're going to take in the system input stream. Now I do apologize. After finishing up recording the video, it came to me that I forgot to mention something really important about scanner. So the scanner, you can only ever have one scanner in your program. Don't ever close it. Have one and never close it, because when you close a scanner, when you do something like s.close, it doesn't just close the scanner, but it also closes the system input stream. So at the next time you do scanner equals new scanner system.in again, it's going to give you an exception because system in is now closed. So my advice is to just have one scanner and use it throughout your entire program. And the way you can do that, if you're familiar with software design, is that you can use a singleton pattern. But if you're not familiar with software design and stuff like that, just make it into a static variable and access it from everywhere, from all your classes, all of your methods, every single use, and never close it. And you don't have to manually close it when the program ends because it closes everything for you. So there's that.
There we go.
And let's ask the question first. Actually, before that, let's make sure it gets run first. I'll comment this out. See that program move right there? Command and slash. Yeah. Now we're gonna create an instance of the input processor. Let's call it IP equals new input processor. And let's call IP.run. There we go. That makes sure we actually run it when we're running the main method. And let's print something out, shall we? Let's print out a question for the user to answer. Now let's. What kind of question do I want? What's a good question? Let's ask the user. Now, what is love? That's a really difficult question, but that's fine for our use. So let's create a string to save the response. Let's call it what is love equals. Now, how are we gonna get the input using scanner? You do it by doing s.nextLine. All right. So what scanner.nextLine does is basically it grabs whenever the user hits enter, it grabs the entire line they typed in and it feeds the line to you. So now if we just add a print statement again, let's print out what is love, and let's run the program. All right, what is love? Of course, we all know the answer to that question. It's baby, don't hurt me. And you see that my input has now been printed. Now, if I go back here, and if we just press on dot, and you can see there are a lot of nexes. So if I type next, you can see there's next line, next big decimal, integer, bytes, double, int, float, short, blah, blah, blah. Which one should you use? So if you're trying to take in an integer, should you use next int? I'm just going to tell you right now that always use next line. I'll show you why in a bit. Because sometimes if you do next int or something, it's going to cause some really weird issues for you, and that's not good. Lots of students get frustrated, or they get tricked by the scanner because they use next int and then their program just going haywire. I'll show you how to solve that in a bit. But first of all, a simple Soylent. Ah, that's really good. By the way, they're not sponsoring this video. I just like it. Okay, where were we? Okay, so so far we've asked the user what is love, right? And then depending on the user's input, we want to do stuff. So how do we? So before that, we could see what we did in argument parser. We had an if statement, but now I'm going to show you how to use a switch statement, which basically has the same functionality as if. I think one of the advantages of a switch versus if is that for switch, you specify the type once, and then the compiler only checks, doesn't have to check the type for each case anymore because it knows what the type is. But for if, it has to check what the type is every time you run it. Sorry, not the compiler, but the runtime. But honestly, for the purposes of this class, the impacts are minute. Like if you have a slower computer or versus a faster computer, like that efficiency is just going to be covered up. Like it's not even going to make a difference. So for this class, you can use either one based on your personal preferences. And I actually personally prefer if statements. Anyhow, so how do you switch statements? You type switch, and then in the parentheses, you tell Java what you want, what's the input that you want to, what's the conditional thing. So switch what is love, bracket, and then we can have different cases. So case one, case, and then I can do baby don't hurt me. And let me do something here. All right, great. So now, what is this doing? So what this is doing is that I'm checking what is love, the variable what is love, with a switch statement, and then I'm checking if it is the case that what is love variable equals to the string baby don't hurt me. If that's true, then it's gonna get into this code block and print out it is me, the head CP, and of course I am the head CP. And what break does, break is very important in switch statements, because now if I have the second case here, love is in the making. Now if I have a second switch statement here and I print something here in pink, and I'm actually, yeah, I'll do that later. Okay, so let's see what happens if I delete. I'm going to show you first what if with the break statement. Now, what is love? I'm going to type in baby don't hurt me. I can't type. And now what you expect to happen is, of course, it prints out it is me, the head CP, which I am, and there we go. It prints that out correctly. Now, if I comment out this break, and let's run the same thing again. And if I type in baby don't hurt me again, you can see that it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at the first case. Without the break, it leaks into the second case. And that's not expected behavior. But without a break, it's just gonna keep going into the next case until it hits a break. So a break in your case is very important to have. Now, what if I don't type baby don't hurt me, I don't type love is in the making, what's going to happen then? Like, how do I deal with all the other cases? How do I deal with essentially the else statement in if else? So there's something called default. So basically what that does is it handles all the things except for the cases that you specified. So I'll just do love is in the mirror. And of course, break. Now, a break for the last case, or like the very last case statement, I don't think you really need it, but it's good practice to have breaks for every case, just in general, so why not, you know? Excuse me. And now if we run the program, I'll type in love is in the making. And of course, it prints out in pink. And if I do some random, I don't know, and it says love is in the mirror. So that's the switch statement taken care of. Now, let me show you what happens when you use next int versus next line. So I'm gonna say that this is the bad approach, which is, by the way, the approach in the course slides. Don't follow that in the course slides. Okay, so we're gonna first prompt the user, of course, to enter an integer. And by the way, if you don't want the users to start typing on a new line, just do print instead of print line, so that you know. Let me show you what I mean. So let me comment this out first. All right, command and slash. Very nice. Oh shoot, I forgot. Okay, so let's do int I1 equals s.next int. All right, let's see what happens. So you can see here, instead of the user input starting on the next line, it starts on the same line, which is good. Let's do integer 2. Oh, the program just ends because I don't have any more logic after that. So let's add some more logic, shall we? So let's tell the user what they just typed in. The int input is I1. right? Pretty straightforward. And if we run it, okay, 99. The input is 99. Okay, so this is all fine. Okay, this is like, so far nothing weird has happened. But now let me show you what happens if I want to take in a string again, and that's when we get into the trouble. So now let's prompt the user to enter a string, and let's do string s1 equals s.next line, because that's how you take in the string, right? And let's print out the string input is s1. All right. So of course the expected behavior, of course, is that let's say we enter in 99, and it's going to say the int input is 99, and then it's going to ask us to enter a string. We enter it, and it shows us the string input is whatever we entered. But let me show you what actually happens here. So let's do 99, enter. Oh look, what the heck just happened? It didn't prompt me for an input. It just went straight past it, the string, the next line. It just went straight past it. Now why is that? So the problem is that whenever you press enter when you're entering something, there's an invisible new line character at the very end. And the problem with using next int is that it only consumes whatever int you typed in. It doesn't consume, it leaves the new line character in the buffer. So what that's going to cause is that next time when you're trying to do s.nextLine, scanner.nextLine, it's going to look into the buffer and it sees a new line character. And it just thinks that, oh, the user has already typed enter. And of course, there's nothing before the new line in the buffer because that was the int that got consumed by next int. So the solution here is just to always use next line. Don't use next int, don't use anything else. Just parse it afterwards, and let me show you how that works. Let me comment all of this up. So let's do the good approach. The head CP approach. All right. So we can largely copy the same code. I'm gonna uncomment that, and then shift tab, move it forward. All right. So instead of next int, let's do next line again. And you see here we have a problem because next line gives you a string, but that's an int. So what you can do is you can do integer.parseInt, and then we'll just do scanner.nextLine in there, and there we go. That's going to work. So let's try running this again. Now I'm going to enter an integer. Let's do 4. And you can see it correctly prompts me for the string. And I'll do Jeff. I'll spell Jeff wrong, but whatever. You see the point. But the problem here, another problem that arises is that, especially when you're, I mean, it doesn't matter, it's not even about the homework, but because we're humans and we're dumb, you cannot expect a user to enter the correct values every time. So what if when it says enter an integer, I just do like 888. And you can see there I get an exception, my program just crashes. Now that's probably not very good when it comes to production or when it comes to your homework. Your program shouldn't crash at all. So how are we going to deal with the program crashing? We can use, so now this is what I call exception handling. So what we can do here is use something called a try-catch block. So what a try-catch block does is that it tries to do something risky. It tries to do something that might cause an exception or an error. An exception is an error. So it tries to do something that causes an exception. And if an exception happens, it catches it and deals with it instead of just crashing it like this. So the syntax goes as follows: try, bracket open, put whatever you want to try in the bracket, and then catch. Now, inside this catch, what we can do is we want to put all the possible kinds of exceptions that a user may encounter. Or if you, let's say, so as you can see here, we just crashed because of a number format exception. So we can put that in here. We can type in number format exception, E, and then like that. So number format exception is the type of the exception. E is the name of it, is the variable name. So basically, it's almost like when you're reading from a function parameter. It's very similar. So what we can do here is you can do e dot get message or whatever, get localized message, print stat trace. So here's my advice as to how to handle stuff. Now, when you're debugging your program, and also this is in the course slides, and I don't agree with it. So in the course slides, what happens is they want you to do e.getMessage like this. But the problem with that is, first of all, it doesn't actually handle the exception gracefully because the user is still going to see like some error message, some primitive error message. And the second thing is when you're debugging your program, as you can see here, all these error thing, this thing before we caught the exception properly, this is called a stack trace. Okay. Now the good thing about a stack trace is that it tells you exactly where the exception happened. So you can see here it says exception in blah blah for input string da da, and then it gives you the line number. See at com.usc.cici201x.input processor.run input processor.java line 35, which is okay. It was this line, but I added the try. But you know what I mean. It gives you a detailed view of exactly where things went wrong. But if I do e.getMessage and I'll run it again. Oh, whoops. That's out of scope. Okay, so the problem is another problem with this try catch block is that whatever thing you declare in the try block, it goes out of scope. So you have to. So if you want to use it later, you gotta declare it beforehand like this. And I think I have to. Oh yeah, it complains it might be null. I'll just initialize it to 0. And now let's run that again. Let's enter A. Oh, right, exactly. So you see, it took me a second there because this is actually the error message. This is what you get for doing e.getMessage, and it's not even read. And you don't know like where did this happen? Like it doesn't tell you. It tells you nothing. And it doesn't tell user anything useful either. Like when you're using a program, what the heck does it mean by saying for input string AAA? It doesn't make sense. So don't do that. So my advice would be when you're debugging, just do e.print stack trace. And what that's going to do is that like when you make a mistake, it's going to tell you what it is, okay? But when you're putting stuff into production, what you can do is you can do system.println. You can give it an error code. Let's say bad int or whatever. Please enter an integer. And now when we run this again, if I enter whatever, now you can see it's a proper error message. It's what you would expect. And then it's easy for you to know what it is because you give it an error code, hopefully a unique one. And also the user knows what to do because you tell them to please enter an integer, right? But you see another problem here because we're prompting the user to enter an integer, right? And then they don't. But the thing is, afterwards we tell them please enter an integer, but then we just go past that. We just go straight to enter a string. Now, how can we? And this is also something that you're going to have to deal with in homework 1. Is that when the user inputs something wrong, how can you prompt the user again and again until they enter the correct input? So this is a pattern that you can use in your homework assignments. So basically, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this into the try block, enter an integer, and I'm going to actually enclose this in a while true loop. Now, a while loop is that so this is a condition that has to be false in order for the while loop to stop. And while that condition is true, the while loop just keeps going on and on. So what you can do here is that you can simply enclose it in the while true statement, so it just infinitely loops. And then you add a break after you read in the integer. Because what's going to happen here is that if the user enters something wrong, if the user enters like something other than an integer, it's not going to get past this line. The program is not going to get past this line. The program is going to jump to the cache block, and it outputs please enter an integer. And it's going to hit the end of the while loop, and since while true is still true, and is always true, it's going to go back to the beginning, and it's going to ask you, please enter an integer. Now, until the user enters the correct input, you're never going to hit the break statement. So let me give you a demo here. Enter an integer. I'm not going to enter one. Please enter an integer. See it prompting me again. Please enter an integer. I can do this all day. It's not going to get out. But the moment I enter an integer, let's say 1, you get past it. So that's how you do it. Now, so far into this video, the way I print this stuff, the way I concatenated the strings, is by using the plus sign. Now, let me show you a different approach to doing this. So for this, let's go back to our argument parser here. And let's say we want to print out the index of the argument and what the argument is. So if we use our old approach of using plus signs, what you can do here is we can do argument, that should be caps, argument plus the index plus arg. Now what this is going to give us is argument 0 is something, argument 1 something, argument 2 something. Let me just run it. Let's not forget to, oops, that's not what I meant to do. Okay, now let's run this again. And you can see here it says argument, oh, let me get rid of that first. Actually, never mind. So you can see here argument 0 is Jeff, argument 1 is arg2, argument 2 is OK. Now, because it's an index, so it starts at 0, not 1. This is what we. This is so far what I did to print stuff. But if you're more, if you like the way you print stuff in C and C++ more, which is using Printf, Printf is also available in Java, and you can just use the same syntax essentially. And then there's also another approach that's similar to Printf. I can show you right here. Let me just comment this up. You can do something called string.format. Now what that does is you can do argument, %, D, %, S. And you just do comma I, comma arg. Now what that does is basically saying this string argument, space, and then you're telling Java that it's some number, but I don't know what yet. I'm going to specify it later. And then this is a string. I don't know what it is yet. I'll specify it later. And when do you specify it? Specify it here by adding multiple arguments. Now let's run this and see what it does. As you can see, it does the same thing. So these are the two different approaches that you can take when it comes to printing strings in Java. So congrats, you made it to the end of week 1's material in CSCI 201. So what we did is we learned how to create a command line Java program. We learned how to read the arguments. We learned how to read the user input. We learned about the conditions, loops, methods, arrays, strings, classes, packages, and exception handling. Now, let's say you want to do something, I'm just adding on to what we did here. Let's say you want to do something with an array or a vector, whatever, but you don't exactly know like what method to use in Java. So the good thing about coding with an IDE is that it gives you hints. So let's say I want to do something. Let's say I'll do it in main actually. I have a string array called R. Now, I want to do something to R. Let's say I want to add stuff to it, but I'm not sure what the syntax is in Java. So when you're coding with an IDE, you just type dot, and it gives you all of this. It gives you all the methods available to that type or to that object, so that you can do whatever thing you want to do to it. So code with an IDE if you're not familiar with the syntax, and it's going to help you. So thanks for watching this video. If you like it, just like it. If you don't like it, I guess don't like it. I'm your head CP. I'm the director of CSCI 21X. and I'll see you in week 2.